The Galactic Council Chamber was the oldest structure in known space. It floated in the void between star systems, a massive station built from metals that no living species remembered how to forge. For 12,000 years, the great races of the Orion Arm had gathered here to discuss trade, settle disputes, and maintain the peace that allowed civilization to flourish. On this day, the chamber was filled with representatives from 47 species. They came in all shapes and sizes. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few had no solid form at all. But they all shared one thing in common. They all believed themselves to be the masters of creation. Ambassador of the Empire stood at the central platform, his green scales gleaming under the artificial lights. They were a proud race. They had conquered 32 worlds in the last millennium and commanded the largest military fleet in the galaxy. When spoke, others listened. "Fellow members of the Council," he announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. "I bring news of great importance. Our exploration vessels have discovered a new inhabited world in the outer regions of the galaxy. The natives call it Earth." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. New discoveries were rare in these times. Most habitable worlds had been found and long ago. "These creatures call themselves humans," continued. "They are primitive by our standards. They have only recently developed the ability to leave their own atmosphere. They have not yet discovered faster-than-light travel. They still fight wars among themselves over resources and ideology." Laughter echoed through the chamber. The idea of a species fighting itself was amusing to most of the assembled races. Such behavior was seen as a sign of inferior development. "The Empire proposes that we bring these humans into the fold of galactic civilization," said. "Under our guidance, of course. Their world is rich in minerals, and their population could provide useful labor for our mining operations." More murmurs of approval. This was how things had always been done. Advanced species found primitive ones and absorbed them into the galactic economy. It was efficient. It was practical. It was the natural order of things. Then a sound filled the chamber that made every being fall silent. It was the sound of crystal grinding against crystal, ancient and terrible. From the shadows at the edge of the room, a figure emerged. Elder Rann had not attended a council meeting in 300 years. His kind were the oldest surviving race in the galaxy. They had existed when most current species were still swimming in primordial oceans. Their bodies were made of living crystal that grew and changed over, and their memories stretched back to times that others could only read about in ancient texts. The elder moved slowly toward the central platform. His crystalline form caught the light and scattered it in patterns that hurt the eyes of organic beings. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "You must not do this," Rand said. "You must not contact the humans, you must not trade with them, you must not provoke them in any way, seal their system, build warning beacons around their borders, let them develop in isolation." Ambassador stared at the ancient being with barely concealed contempt. "With respect, Elder, you have been in meditation for centuries. Perhaps you are not aware of how the galaxy operates now. The Empire does not fear primitives who still use chemical rockets." "Fear," Rand repeated, and his crystal body flickered with inner light. "You speak of fear as if it were a weakness. I tell you now that fear is wisdom. Fear is what keeps species alive long enough to become old. What could we possibly have to fear from creatures who cannot even unite their own world?" Another ambassador called out. This was High Minister of the Syndicate, a coalition of merchant species who cared only for profit. Rand turned his ancient gaze toward, and the merchant shrank back in his seat. "I have lived for 400,000 years," the elder said. "In that time, I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched stars die and new ones ignite. I have witnessed the extinction of species beyond counting, and in all that time, I have only been truly afraid twice." The chamber was absolutely silent now. The first time was when my own people nearly destroyed ourselves in the madness of our youth. We learned from that mistake. We became peaceful. We became wise. We thought we understood the universe. Rand paused, and his crystalline form dimmed as if the memory itself caused him pain. The second time was when we encountered a species much like these humans. It was millions of years ago on a world far from here. They were primitive, just as you describe. Divided, violent, irrational. We thought they were no threat. We thought we could control them, use them, absorb them into our civilization. What happened? Someone asked in a whisper. They fought back, Rand said simply. Not the way other species fight. When we conquered their world, they did not surrender. When we destroyed their cities, they did not negotiate. When we killed 90% of their population, the remaining 10% did not beg for mercy. They got angry. The elders' light pulsed with ancient terror. They learned our technology in a single generation. They turned our own weapons against us. They did not stop when they had driven us from their world. They followed us. They hunted us across the stars. They burned worlds that had sheltered us. They destroyed species that had traded with us. They did not want victory. They wanted extinction. But you survived, pointed out. Your kind is still here. Barely, Rand replied. We survived only because they eventually turned on each other. Their fury was so great that when they had no external enemies left, they directed it inward. They destroyed themselves before they could finish destroying us. But it took us millions of years to recover. Millions of years of hiding, of rebuilding, of fear. The elder moved closer too, and the ambassador forced himself not to step back. I have studied these humans, Rand said. I have watched their world for centuries. They are the same. The same fire burns in them, the same refusal to submit, the same capacity for both creation and destruction. If you provoke them, if you give them a reason to unite against you, you will unleash something that this galaxy has not seen in millions of years. Ambassador straightened his scales and smiled. With respect, elder, times have changed. The Empire commands weapons that could crack planets. We have ships that can cross the galaxy in days. These humans cannot even reach their nearest neighboring star. Whatever threat their kind posed in ancient times, they are no match for modern galactic civilization. The Council voted that day. 46 species voted to allow them to proceed with their contact mission. Only the abstained. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Elder Rand stood alone in the darkness. His crystalline form flickered with light that might have been sorrow or might have been fear. You should have listened, he whispered to the empty room. May the universe forgive us all for what is about to come. 3 months later, the first warships entered Earth's solar system. They expected a quick conquest and easy submission. They had no idea that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. The morning had started like any other at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Commander Daniel Price was reviewing mission reports when his assistant burst through the door without knocking. Her face was white as paper. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, "right now." 15 minutes later, Daniel stood in the main control room with every screen showing the same impossible image. Massive ships, each one larger than any structure humans had ever built, were moving through the asteroid belt toward Earth. They did not match any design from any nation on the planet. They were not human. "We received a transmission," said the communications officer, her hands shaking as she pressed the playback button. A voice filled the room. It was translated into English, but the tone was cold and mechanical. "Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. You have been selected for integration into the Empire. Resistance is not advised. Prepare to receive our representatives. Any hostile action will result in immediate destruction." Daniel stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he picked up the phone and made the most important call in human history. Within hours, the leaders of every major nation were connected in an emergency conference. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to hide. A few suggested immediate surrender, arguing that humanity could not possibly fight against technology so far beyond their own. Daniel listened to the arguments for 20 minutes. Then he stood up and asked a single question. Has anyone received any guarantee that surrender means survival? The room went quiet. Because from what I can see, Daniel continued, these beings crossed who knows how many light years to reach us. They didn't come to make friends. They came to take what they want, and I don't think they care whether we're alive or dead when they do it. As if to prove his point, reports began flooding in. The alien fleet had destroyed a research station on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. 47 scientists who had been studying the ice-covered world were gone in an instant. No warning, no demand, just death. Admiral was the first military leader to speak. She was 62 years old and had served her entire adult life preparing for wars that she hoped would never come. Now, she faced a war that no one had ever imagined. "We cannot win this fight," she said. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "Our weapons are toys compared to what they have. Our ships are slow and fragile. Our numbers are meaningless against that kind of firepower." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as iron. "But we are going to fight anyway, because that is what humans do. We do not surrender to those who come to destroy us. We do not kneel to those who murder our people. If we are going to die, we will die on our feet, with weapons in our hands and defiance in our hearts." The vote was unanimous. Earth would resist. What happened next surprised everyone, including the humans themselves. The alien fleet expected to find a planet torn apart by internal conflict, unable to coordinate any kind of defense. Instead, they watched as humanity transformed itself in a matter of weeks. Factories that had been building cars and televisions began producing weapons and armor. Universities emptied as students and professors joined research teams working day and night to understand the alien technology. Armies that had spent decades pointing guns at each other suddenly found themselves fighting side by side. In China, engineers worked with their counterparts in America to design new missile systems. In Russia, soldiers trained alongside soldiers from nations they had threatened just months before. In Africa, in Europe, in Asia, in every corner of the world, humans set aside centuries of conflict and focused on a single goal: survival. Daniel Price was given command of the newly formed United Earth Defense Force. He had never wanted to be a leader of men. He had dreamed of exploring the stars in peace, of making contact with other civilizations and sharing knowledge across the cosmos. Instead, he found himself preparing for the greatest battle in human history. "They think we're primitives," he told his officers on the night before the battle. "They think we'll break when we see what they can do. They have no idea what they're dealing with." The fleet entered Earth orbit on a Tuesday afternoon. They expected to find a world ready to surrender. Instead, they found a world that had turned itself into a fortress. The first wave of attacks hit the alien ships from all directions at once. Missiles launched from submarines hidden in the depths of every ocean. Kinetic projectiles fired from in-mountain bunkers. Nuclear weapons detonated in precise patterns designed to overwhelm alien shields. They were shocked. No primitive species had ever fought back like this. No conquered world had ever resisted with such coordination and fury. But their shock quickly turned to anger. They had weapons that humanity could not match. They had shields that could absorb nuclear explosions. They had experience conquering dozens of worlds. The battle lasted 6 hours. In those 6 hours, humanity lost 12 major cities. Millions of people died. The great capitals of Earth became craters of ash and melted stone. The sky itself seemed to burn as alien weapons rained destruction from above. But humanity did not surrender. Admiral commanded the defense from a bunker deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. She watched the casualty reports climb higher and higher, each number representing a life lost, a family destroyed. Tears ran down her face, but her voice never wavered as she gave her orders. "Keep fighting," she said again and again. "Make them pay for every inch. Make them remember this day." And they did. When the battle finally ended, they had lost 30 ships. It was a small number compared to human losses, but it was 30 more ships than they had ever lost to a primitive species. 30 more ships than they had expected to lose at all. The alien commander sent a message to his superiors back on The humans are more dangerous than anticipated. They refuse to surrender. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. Request additional forces." The response came quickly. "Reinforcements. The Empire does not struggle against primitives. Crush them quickly and be done with it." It was the worst decision the Empire would ever make. Because in the ruins of their cities, in the ashes of their dead, the humans were not giving up. They were not crying or begging for mercy. They were studying the wreckage of alien ships that had crashed to Earth. They were learning. They were adapting. And they were getting very, very angry. Daniel Price stood in the ruins of Houston, the city where he had once dreamed of reaching the stars. He looked up at the sky where alien ships still hovered, waiting to finish what they had started. "You made a mistake," he said quietly. "You could have left us alone. You could have ignored our little world and gone on your way, but you didn't. You came here, you killed our people, you burned our cities." He bent down and picked up a piece of alien metal from a fallen ship. "Now you're going to learn why that was the worst mistake you ever made. 3 years had passed since the first attacked Earth. 3 years of blood and fire and death. 3 years that would change the galaxy forever." In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, the assembled representatives listened to reports that none of them could believe. The mighty Empire, conqueror of 32 worlds, master of the most powerful military fleet in known space, was losing a war against primitives who had not even discovered faster-than-light travel. "This is impossible," declared High Minister, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly in confusion. "They have weapons that can destroy planets. How can they be losing to creatures who were still using chemical rockets 3 years ago?" The ambassador was notably absent from this meeting. His species was too proud to admit their failures in public, but the intelligence reports spoke for themselves. In the first year of the war, the humans had learned to shoot down fighters. They studied the wreckage of crashed ships, figured out how the alien technology worked, and built their own versions. It was crude at first, held together with wire and hope, but it worked. In the second year, the humans had cracked shield technology. The process should have taken centuries. The greatest minds of the galactic community had needed generations to understand such complex systems. The humans did it in 18 months. They did it because they had no choice. They did it because the alternative was extinction. In the third year, the humans had started fighting back in space itself. They built their own ships using stolen technology and human ingenuity. The ships were ugly and uncomfortable, designed for war rather than elegance. But they were fast and deadly, and the soldiers who crewed them were willing to die for every inch of progress. The council watched recordings of human battles and could not understand what they were seeing. Human soldiers charged into certain death without hesitation. Human pilots rammed their ships into enemy vessels when their weapons failed. Human commanders sacrificed themselves to save their subordinates. One recording in particular haunted the dreams of every being who watched it. It showed a young officer named Chris leading a strike team onto a captured command ship. The mission was simple: plant explosives in the reactor core and escape before the ship exploded. But nothing about the mission went as planned. They were waiting for them. His team was pinned down in a narrow corridor, taking heavy fire from all directions. One by one, his soldiers fell. The mission was failing. What did next made no sense to any species in the galaxy except humans. He stood up. He walked into the open, directly into the line of fire. He drew the attention of every soldier in the corridor, giving his remaining team members the chance to escape and complete the mission. He was shot 11 times, 11 wounds that should have killed any reasonable being, but he did not fall. He kept walking, kept fighting, kept drawing fire. He killed 4 more enemy soldiers with his bare hands after his weapon ran dry. When his team finally reached the reactor core and set the charges, they found still alive, still fighting, still refusing to die. They dragged him toward the escape pods, but he ordered them to leave him behind. "I'll hold them off," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Finish the mission, that's an order." They obeyed. The ship exploded 3 minutes later. They could not understand such behavior. Their entire civilization was built on the principle of self-preservation. When defeat was certain, surrender was logical. When death was unavoidable, escape was the only rational choice. The idea of deliberately sacrificing oneself for others was alien to them in the truest sense of the word. But to humans, it was natural. It was what they had always done. Throughout their bloody history, humans had thrown themselves on grenades to save their friends, had gone down with sinking ships so others could live, had faced impossible odds rather than abandon those who depended on them. Elder Rand watched these recordings alone in his meditation chamber. His crystalline body flickered with light that might have been sadness or might have been fear. "I told them," he whispered to himself. "I warned them, they should have listened." He had seen this before, millions of years ago. The same fire burning in alien eyes, the same refusal to accept defeat, the same terrifying capacity for both love and violence, sometimes in the same moment. The humans were not just fighting a war. They were evolving before the galaxy's eyes. Every battle taught them something new. Every defeat made them stronger. Every loss fueled their rage and sharpened their determination. Back on Earth, Commander Daniel Price stood before a crowd of new recruits. These were not professional soldiers. They were teachers and farmers, engineers and artists, mothers and fathers who had never held a weapon before the war began. Now they were humanity's last hope. "They think we're primitives," Daniel told them. "They think we're animals who got lucky. They have no idea what we really are." He gestured to a display showing the stars around Earth's solar system. "For our entire history, we have fought each other. We have waged war over land, over resources, over ideas. We have done terrible things to our own kind, and because of that, they think we are weak. They think we are divided. They think we are easy prey." His voice grew harder. "But what they don't understand is that we have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. We have learned to fight in every environment, with every weapon, under every condition. We have survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that should have wiped us out. We are still here because we are too stubborn to die." The recruits stood, their eyes burning with purpose. "Now we have a new enemy," Daniel continued. "An enemy who thinks they can come to our world and take what they want. An enemy who thinks they can burn our cities and kill our people without consequence. An enemy who made the mistake of giving us something we never had before." He paused. "They gave us a common enemy. They united us in a way we could never unite ourselves. And now they're going to learn what happens when humanity stops fighting itself and starts fighting together." In the corridors of the Galactic Council, species who had laughed at the primitive humans now spoke in hushed, frightened voices. The Empire was bleeding. Its mighty fleet was shrinking with every battle. Its soldiers were afraid to face human warriors. And the humans were not just defending anymore. They were building. They were planning. They were preparing to take the war to the stars. High Minister made a private call to his financial advisors. "Sell all investments in bonds," he ordered, "immediately, and start making inquiries about opening trade relations with Earth." His advisor was shocked. "But sir, the humans are primitives. They don't even have faster-than-light travel yet." Multiple eyes blinked slowly. They didn't have shield technology 3 years ago either. Now they have better shields than whatever these humans are, they are not primitives, and I intend to be on their good side when they finally reach the stars." The galaxy was waking up to a terrible truth. The elders had been right. The humans were not prey. They were predators. And they had just discovered that there was an entire galaxy full of enemies waiting to be conquered. 5 years after the first ship entered Earth's solar system, Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and prepared to do something that no human had ever done before. She was going to lead a fleet to another star system. She was going to bring the war to the enemy's doorstep. Behind her ship came 200 vessels, each one built in the shipyards that humanity had constructed in the ruins of their devastated planet. These ships were not elegant like designs. They were ugly and brutal, covered in weapons and armor, designed for one purpose only: destruction. The crews were not professional soldiers. They were survivors, farmers whose fields had been burned, teachers whose students had been killed, parents who had buried their children in the ashes of alien attacks. They had volunteered not because they wanted glory, but because they wanted revenge. "Jump in 30 seconds, announced the navigation officer. "All ships report ready." Took a deep breath. She thought about everyone she had lost in the war. Her parents, killed when Lowe's Angels was destroyed in the first wave. Her brother, who died defending a refugee convoy from fighters. Her best friend, who gave her life to blow up an alien command ship. "For everyone we've lost," she said quietly. Then louder, "All ships execute jump." The stars blurred and shifted as 200 human ships crossed the void between solar systems in an instant. When the universe snapped back into focus, they were looking at something no human had ever seen before. The hung in space like a green jewel, surrounded by rings of orbital stations and defensive platforms. Thousands of ships filled the space around it, the heart of an empire that had conquered dozens of worlds. And it was all about to burn. Opened a channel to broadcast on all frequencies. Her voice reached not just the fleet, but every communication relay in the system, spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. "This is Captain Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. 5 years ago, you came to our world without invitation. You killed our people. You burned our cities. You thought we would break." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We didn't break, we learned. We adapted, we built. And now we're here." Her voice turned cold. "You have 1 hour to evacuate civilian populations from orbital stations. After that, we will destroy everything in this system that can hold a weapon. Your empire ends today." The response was immediate and furious. Every ship in the system turned toward the human fleet, every weapon powered up, every soldier prepared to defend there against the primitives who had dared to challenge them. The battle for Prime would be remembered for generations. It lasted 4 days and nights, though day and night meant nothing in the void of space. It was the largest engagement in galactic history, with thousands of ships fighting and dying in the darkness between worlds. The humans were outnumbered 10 to 1. They had less than half the firepower of the defenders. Every military calculation said they should lose. They didn't lose. Human tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They attacked in waves, never giving the enemy time to regroup. They used suicide ships loaded with explosives to breach enemy formations. They employed electronic warfare that turned weapons against their own ships. They fought with a fury and creativity that left their enemies confused and terrified. On the second day, Captain Lisa led her squadron directly into the heart of the formation. Her ship was already crippled, engines failing, life support failing, half her crew dead. Instead of retreating, she accelerated. "All hands to escape pods," she ordered. "I'll keep her on course." Her crew obeyed, ejecting into space to be picked up by friendly ships. Lisa stayed at the helm, guiding her dying vessel toward the largest command ship. She was singing softly to herself when the impact came, an old song her mother had taught her when she was a child. The explosion took out the command ship and 3 others nearby. It broke the back of the formation. On the 3rd day, they tried to negotiate. They offered to surrender all claims to human space, to pay reparations, to leave humanity alone forever. General Cooper, commanding the human fleet from the Defiance after Captain Torres was injured, responded with a single word: "No." By the 4th day, the fleet was broken. Their orbital stations were debris. They were surrounded by human ships. An empire that had taken 1,000 years to build had been shattered in less than a week. But the humans did not stop there. Word spread across the galaxy like fire. The humans were not satisfied with defending their home. They were hunting down every military installation, every supply depot, every ship that had participated in the attack on Earth. They were not fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for extinction. Species that had supported them began to panic. They had sold weapons and supplies to the Empire, had turned away human refugees, had laughed at the primitives who dared to resist. Now those primitives were coming for them. Ambassadors flooded to the human fleet, begging for mercy. They offered technology, resources, alliance, anything to avoid the wrath that had destroyed them. General Cooper received them in a conference room aboard the Defiance, the stars of conquered space visible through the windows behind him. "You all had a chance to help us," he told them. "When they attacked, you could have intervened. You could have given us aid. You could have at least refused to supply our enemies." His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it more terrifying. "You chose to do nothing. Some of you actively helped them. You thought we would lose and you wanted to be on the winning side." He smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Well, we didn't lose, and now you have to live with the consequences." The terms he offered were harsh: complete disarmament of military forces, massive reparations to Earth, political reforms to prevent future aggression. Any species that refused would face the same fate as the. Every single one accepted. Within a year, the Empire existed only in history books. There remained, but it was demilitarized and occupied. Their population was alive but broken, forced to watch as the primitives they had despised became the masters of the galaxy. General Cooper returned to Earth as a hero, but he found no joy in his victory. He stood in the ruins of Washington, the old capital that had been deliberately left unrepaired as a memorial to the fallen, and looked up at the stars. "This is just the beginning," he said to Admiral, who had survived the war against all odds. "We've shown the galaxy what we can do when we're angry. Now we have to show them what we can do when we're at peace." Nodded slowly. "Do you think they'll ever trust us?" Cooper considered the question. "Probably not, but they'll respect us, and right now that's enough." The galaxy had changed forever. The old order was dead, and in its place something new was being born, something that would either save the galaxy or destroy it. Humanity had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. 10 years had passed since the first attacked Earth. 10 years of war, victory, and transformation. The galaxy that existed before that fateful day was gone forever, replaced by something new and uncertain. The Galactic Council had been dissolved. In its place stood the Terran Accords, a new governing body that maintained peace across hundreds of worlds. Humanity had not demanded leadership of this new order. They had not threatened or conquered their way to the top. They simply existed, and that was enough. Every species in the galaxy remembered what humans could do when provoked. Every leader understood that challenging Earth meant annihilation. So they fell in line, not out of love or respect, but out of pure, primal fear. President Dawson stood at the window of her office in New Geneva, the capital city that humanity had built to replace all the capitals lost in the war. The city was beautiful, a blend of human architecture and alien technology, proof that the survivors could create as well as destroy. But knew that beauty was fragile. Beneath the peaceful surface, old hatred still simmered. Some species resented human dominance. Some humans wanted to punish everyone who had stood against them. Peace was not a permanent state. It was a choice that had to be made every single day. Her assistant interrupted her thoughts. "Madam President, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is Ran." Turned sharply. The elder had not been seen since before the war ended. Most assumed he had died or retreated into permanent meditation. For him to appear now, after all this time, meant something important. "Send him in." The ancient being entered slowly, his crystalline form dimmer than it had been a decade ago. The war had aged him somehow, which should have been impossible for a species measured in millions of years. He looked tired in a way that transcended physical exhaustion. "President Dawson," he said, his voice like wind through broken glass. "Thank you for receiving me." "You warned them," replied. "You tried to stop the war before it started. That earns you at least a conversation." Rand settled into a position that might have been sitting, though his body had no clear legs or seat. "I have come to tell you the truth, a truth that I have carried for 400,000 years, a truth that you deserve to know." Waited, saying nothing. "We created you," the elder said. "Not directly, not in the way you build machines, but we seeded your world with genetic potential millions of years ago, hoping to grow a species that could help us explore the galaxy." The words hung in the air, felt the weight of them but did not let her expression change. "Most of our experiments produced peaceful species," Rand continued. "Cooperative civilizations that joined the galactic community without conflict. They were useful and productive, but they were also limited. They lacked something essential, a spark that drives evolution beyond simple survival." "A spark," repeated carefully. "Aggression, determination, the refusal to accept limitations." Rand's light flickered. "We wanted to create species that would push boundaries, that would solve problems we could not, that would go places we feared to travel, but we could not control what emerged from that process." "The species you mentioned before, the ones like us." "Yes, on worlds where conditions were harsh enough, where survival required more than cooperation, something different evolved. Something that carried the seed of greatness and the seed of destruction in equal measure." Moved to sit across from the ancient being. "You said they destroyed themselves." "They did. Their fury was so great that when they ran out of external enemies, they turned it inward. They burned themselves to ash while we hid and prayed that they would not find us first." Rand's form shuddered. "We thought we were safe. We thought that species like that were a mistake, a failed experiment that would always consume itself. But we didn't." "No, you didn't." The elder's voice carried something that might have been wonder. "You came so close so many times. Your history is filled with moments where humanity could have destroyed itself. Wars, weapons, hatred that seemed unstoppable. But each time, somehow, you pulled back. You found a way to redirect your fire outward instead of inward." Leaned forward. "Why? What makes us different?" "I do not know," Rand admitted. "Perhaps it is random chance. Perhaps it is something in your culture that we cannot see. Perhaps it is simply luck." He paused. "Or perhaps you are what we always hoped to create but never believed was possible. A species with the fire to challenge the universe and the wisdom to know when to stop." The president considered this for a long moment. "Why are you telling me this now?" The elder's light dimmed even further. "Because there is something else. Something that even my kind does not speak of openly. The galaxy is not as empty as it appears. In the void between galaxy clusters, in the darkness that light cannot reach, there are things that watch and wait." Felt a chill run down her spine despite herself. "They have destroyed civilizations before, not merely empires or species, but entire regions of space. They move so slowly that generations pass between their attacks, but they are always there, always watching." Rand looked directly at with whatever sense allowed his kind to see. "We have always run from them, hidden and hoped they would pass us by. We never had the strength to fight back." But we might. You might. If any species could stand against what lurks in the outer dark, it would be humanity. Your fire, your fury, your absolute refusal to accept defeat. The elder rose slowly. That is why I warned the council against provoking you, not because I feared you would destroy the. That was certain from the moment they attacked. I warned them because I feared what would happen after. I feared that you would burn yourselves out like the others, and the galaxy would lose its only hope against what is coming. Stood as well, meeting the ancient being's gaze. We don't burn ourselves out anymore. We found something better to fight for. I know. That is why I am here. For the first time, something like hope flickered in Rand's crystalline form. I am here to offer you everything my people know about the threats that wait beyond the stars. I am here to place the under human protection, something we have never done in 400,000 years of existence. The president extended her hand in a gesture that the elder had clearly studied, but perhaps never performed. They shook hands, crystal against flesh, ancient against young. Welcome to the Terran Accords, said. I hope you're ready to work hard because we have a lot of galaxy to protect. She turned back to the window, looking up at the stars that humanity had once dreamed of reaching in peace. Those dreams had died in fire and been reborn in blood, but they had been reborn, which was what mattered. Somewhere out there, in the spaces between galaxies, something ancient and terrible was watching. Something that had destroyed civilizations older than that had erased species from existence before humans had climbed down from trees. It was still watching, still waiting, still coming. And for the first time in cosmic history, it would find someone waiting to fight back. Because that was what humans did. They fought, they survived, they protected what they loved. And they never, ever gave up.